Georgia vs. Alabama. National Championship game. Live score and updates. Vertical line. Alabama brought in freshman quarterback Tua Tagovailoa and it has paid off in the second half. A 6-yard touchdown pass to Henry Ruggs cuts Georgia's lead to 13-7. Vertical line. Stay here for live updates and analysis from college football's national championship game in Atlanta. How to watch. ESPN has a broadcast, but you can stream the game here. 3Q, 10:51. Tide's defense picks up the intensity. Alabama's offense may have looked slow coming out of the locker room, but the Tide's defense was clearly fired up, forcing consecutive plays of negative yards before Georgia's drive fizzled out with a 4-yard run by D'Andre Swift. The Bulldogs had the ball for just 93 seconds of clock time, but the team's fans were left angry about a missed face mask called on Swift's second down run which went for -8 yards. 3Q, 13:03. Alabama switches quarterbacks, but gets the same result. Alabama started the half with Tua Tagovailoa at quarterback rather than Jalen Hurts. It was a somewhat surprising change, which means both teams are playing true freshmen at quarterback. Tagovailoa's opening drive did not make much of a change in the offense as he ran for 4 yards and passed for 2 before a sack led them with a 3rd and 8, effectively ending their drive. Alabama had a short injury delay while Jonah Williams was treated on the field, but they eventually punted the ball away. Continue reading the main story. Drape. Nick Saban is either panicking or a genius. He's put Tagovailoa in at quarterback, a freshman, after saying it wasn't Jalen Hurts' fault the Tide struggled in the first half. I vote for panicking. He has decided that he can't stop Georgia, and needs to score with them. Hurts is 25-2. At least we know now that Robo-Coach Saban is human after all. Kirby Smart has gotten under Nick's skin. Here's the view from Vegas. Here's what's going on in Las Vegas, according to our friends at William Hill. In the second half, Bama is giving 6 points, which means the money is coming in and expects the Crimson Tide to outscore the Dogs by 6 points in this next half. The over/under for second half points is 23. So the smart money expects a strong half from Alabama. If you are a betting man, like me, I'd take Georgia +6 and the under for the second half. An interesting note, in January, you could have gotten Georgia to win the championship at odds of 40-1. Bama 3-1. 2Q, 0 minutes and 7 seconds, Bulldogs head into the locker room with a 13-0 lead. Georgia did not have much time to work with, but they had all 3 timeouts remaining, so they decided to be aggressive heading into halftime. It paid off, with Mecole Hardman taking the direct snap into the end zone from 1 yard out for the first touchdown of the game and a 13-0 lead for the Bulldogs. The drive started with 1:19 remaining in the half, and Jake Fromm immediately found Riley Ridley for a 10-yard gain. Fromm was nearly intercepted a few plays later, but when Alabama's Anthony Averett failed to get his hands on the ball, the Bulldogs capitalized by getting 14 yards on the ground from Sony Michel on the next play. An Alabama penalty got Georgia 5 more yards. D'Andre Swift ran for 7 and Fromm, not seeing any good receiving options, pulled the ball down and reeled off a 14-yard run of his own. With a short field in front of him, Fromm threw aggressively to Terry Godwin for a 16-yard gain near the goal line, setting up a 1st and goal from the 3. The roughing the passer call got Georgia all the way to the Alabama 1-yard line, and Hardman took the ball on a direct snap, running into the end zone easily. Drape. Wonderful call by Georgia offensive coordinator Jim Chaney to run the Wildcat, a snap to Mecole Hardman Jr., who waltzes to the corner. This game is far from over. Nick Saban is frustrated in his halftime interview, but he purposefully doesn't lay it on quarterback Jalen Hurts. Georgia's Kirby Smart is understated and says Jake Fromm is making good decisions. Fromm is going to make Dog fans forget Buck Elliott with another half like that. Not really. I'm not putting this in the victory column for Georgia yet. Saban and the Tide are too good, see 5 national championships, but that was a big score to end the half. Tracy, to go off Joe's point, the past 2 national title games, both of which also involved Alabama, were shootouts whose final scores were 35-31 and 45-40. At halftime of those games, the scores were, respectively, 14-7 and 21-7. If past is prologue, the second half will involve substantially more scoring than the first. 2Q, 1:19, nothing for Alabama. Alabama's offense is not doing anything right now. Georgia forced a 3-and-out, with the Crimson Tide getting 7 yards on a pair of runs before an incomplete pass and a punt completed their drive. To Q. 2:14, Georgia's Jovan Wims goes to locker room. The nice punt resulted in Georgia starting from their own 5-yard line, and with so little room to work they settled for 2 short runs by McChubb before Defame stepped back into the pocket and found Riley Ridley in the middle of the field for a huge 16-yard completion. It was Ridley's third big catch of the game, helping somewhat alleviate the concern of Jovan Wims having gone into Georgia's locker room to be evaluated for an injury. Georgia quickly found itself in another third down situation, but this time From's throw was well off its mark, skipping to the ground in front of Mecole Hardman. The Bulldogs were forced to punt, but thanks to Ridley's catch the field position is not nearly as bad as it could have been. To Q. 5:15, tight offense shows some life, but stalls out. Alabama got a huge start to the drive on a delayed keeper by Jalen Hurts that went for 31 yards, with Georgia seemingly having been caught on their heels. But the Bulldogs quickly made up for that mistake when David Bellamy got a huge 6-yard sack on 2nd and 9. Josh Jacob ran the ball for 5 yards and then the Crimson Tide punted yet again, showing little sign of having figured out Georgia's defense. To Q. 7:33, another Georgia drive ends in a field goal. Georgia started using all of their weapons and had the team's best drive of the game, but after failing to get into the end zone after reaching 1st and goal, they settled for a 27-yard field goal from Rodrigo Blankenship that increased their lead to 6-0. Looking to capitalize on getting the ball back so quickly after they had taken the lead, the Bulldogs started things off when Defame hit D'Andre Swift with a screen pass that went for 15 yards. Runs by McChubb and From picked up a second first down. Then From aggressively challenged the Alabama defense by throwing downfield, and it worked, with Riley Ridley contributing a 23-yard catch and run while Jovan Wims made a circus catch on the sideline that stood up to an official review. That set up a 1st and goal from Alabama's 10-yard line, but the Bulldogs stalled out, setting up Blankenship for yet another kick. Drape, wow, how big has freshman Defame been? That was a big throw to Riley Ridley, and even a bigger one to Wims to take them into the red zone. He almost made a freshman mistake on 3rd and 6. The Dogs should have had 7 there. A 6-0 lead over Alabama is not enough after you've pushed them around. To Q. 12:52, Alabama fails to answer Georgia's scoring drive. After a touchback, Alabama started at their own 25 and they answered Georgia's scoring drive by going absolutely nowhere. 2 runs and an incomplete pass generated only 4 yards before the Crimson Tide punted the ball away. Georgia had an injury delay early in the drive when David Marshall, the sophomore linebacker, was slow to get up after a running play before being taken to a medical tent for further evaluation. Drape, here is what Alabama was worried about before the game, and is now in a full-blown panic. The Georgia defensive front is strong and harassing. They totally owned Oklahoma's Baker Mayfield, the Heisman winner. Jalen Hurts looks lost. Unless the Tide opens up a ground game, Hurts is going to be hurting, and the Dogs are going to be rolling over the Tide.